Welcome back, everybody, to the next episode of Hardball Talks. My name is Brett Swip. I'm the host of Hardball Talks, where we bring various sports and life topics in hopes of providing the listener value. And today we are continuing down our hitting series, especially talking about approach and the mindset and the thought patterns that are needed at the next level. And today our guest is Darin Hendrickson, who's just really a local college coach legend, and he's been at SLU for a long time, and I'll let him do a brief introduction. Darin.
Thanks for having me, Brett. I've been at St. Louis U for it's my 18th year now, and I started the program at Fontbonne when I was 25 years old, and I went to Forest Park for 4 years after that, and then I went to Central Missouri. So I've coached at 4 different levels, and had a lot of great kids, great people. Just been a good ride to see how this game's evolved, and I'm excited to talk baseball today.
Yeah, I was on the Division III circuit coaching for a while, and I was sad to hear about the closing of Fontbonne. I competed against them often with when I was at Wash U and at Webster. I'm sure that was kind of a sad time for you hearing that as well.
Yeah, it was. I got a call, and they said that they were going to stop the whole school, much less the program. And you're always you think back, and a lot of my alums reached out. We had a little reunion. When you start a program, you certainly have organic ties, to say the least. But it is very. It brought back a lot of years. It's been a long time. I mean, it's almost it's basically 30 years ago for me. So I'm giving my age, but.
Right.
Also, it's it's sign of the times in some cases, and things go on. So, but it's great memories with those players.
Yep. And you have you want to just briefly share on your family? They're in the game as well, and you guys are around the game a lot.
Yeah, I have my wife Laura and is around, and my 2 sons and my daughter are a big part of this whole thing. They've been along the rides of all these places, but my oldest son is at McKendree now coaching, and he didn't listen to me. He got into coaching and decided to tackle it, but he's doing a lot better. He likes the challenge is insane, and we're all challenged at every level, and he's going to find out right away what it's all about. Some awfully good baseball there in the GLVC, and then my youngest Andrew is at Lincoln Land playing, and he's going to go to Central Missouri next year, which is ironically where he was born. So, but he had won 2 state championships with Edwardsville, and was fortunate to play for a great program that, certainly prepared him for moving to his next step. So, yeah. And my daughter graduated from SLU and is in the working world. So I'm officially awesome. A dad. That's my real job, of course.
Well, we are going to get right into it, and what kind of sparked these last few episodes to talk about hitting approach was a survey that we gave our coaches coming out of the summer ball season, and we were asking about our high school hitters or just asking about overall the game. What did the coaches what did they like about their athletes? Production. What did they feel like they were maybe behind on? And just to be honest, a really big topic was hitting approach. The IQ of hitting, the battle in game between the pitcher and the hitter, just the adjustments that were needed, pitch to pitch. Those became like really big talking points for our coaches on things that they wanted to see our athletes improve on. And so really myself, Coach Hiskey, who's one of our player development trainers here, we just kind of sought out more knowledge from coaches at the next level. And we want to dive into what it is that you're talking, SLU is talking to their hitters about and how they're helping them navigate this mindset and hitting approach. So there's a little background on how we got to this place. So let's dive right into it. Let's just start off with the quick one-liner or the quick summary of what is SLU baseball's hitting approach?
Well, it's such a powerful, loaded, overarching question. It's hard to answer briefly. So please bear with me for a little bit. one of the key points of this whole podcast or any of this stuff about hitting, especially, but I just think, I've been thinking about this a lot. In the winter, coaches get a little stir crazy and start inventing things to do to stay busy. But when you're trying to learn and figure this out each day, you think about what do we need to do better? Where's the game going? How is it changing? What did I see this fall? Common themes. So you just mentioned your common theme, obviously, with the hitting approach. So first of all, I've had some, I see the game. Everyone sees the game differently based on what positions they probably played. I see it through the lens of a pitcher. I always have, but I also remember, Brett, I've been a head coach for almost 30 years now, literally. And I've had to do a lot myself because a lot of places I was at before, we didn't have full-time assistants, right? We didn't have the stuff. When I got to SLU, obviously I had, and in Central Missouri for that matter, I had full-time guys. And so what I always did was I tried to hire the best hitting people I could find to, I called the pitches for years. I ran the pitching game. And then I got some really good pitching coaches lately. So like any, I think, so-called leader that's trying to do good, you try to hire good people and keep them and or promote them and move them. And, that's just such a simple thing, but it doesn't work in some cases. Egos get in the way. People get weird and on and on. So I answer it from that way because, there's a lot of noise out there right now for these poor kids. I'm really on the kids' side on this. Big time, because lately, Twitter shows a lot of big league hitter videos, okay? And then the high school kid goes and watches it. But, if you stay in your lane as a coach, my job is a mid-major coach. So you ask me, what's SLU's hitting approach? So my job is SLU baseball. It's not the Cardinals. It's not St. Louis, whatever. It's the SLU baseball. High school baseball, college baseball, whatever. You have to know what's happening with your game and teach that well, and don't get off track as far as I'm concerned with, kind of know what your hitters can do and what they can't. Like I'll give you for instance real quick. We had a guy that was a 4-year player for us, a great player, but probably wouldn't teach the way he hit, probably wouldn't teach his whole approach, certainly he pulled the ball just an exorbitant amount of times on his, spray charts were insane. But our park played to his swing, and, we tried for a week or two in the fall to get him to kind of move the ball the other way a little bit. Our hitting coach looked at me, he's like, can we just live with him pulling the ball and just hitting, 10 home runs with 50 RBIs on and on. And he goes, can you live with those numbers? And I said, absolutely. I said, we're not going to reinvent this guy. And so that's a great example of, probably what I see is blanket teaching in the winters. And there's not everybody doing it wrong at all. This isn't a rant about that. It's more about, I think the two biggest things for me, and one of my better hitting coaches I've ever had, who's going to be a big league coach in a year or two, Will Bradley's his name. He was my first recruit at Central Missouri, and he's the hitting coordinator for Tampa Bay right now, in the entire minor league system. So he doesn't even really talk about the swing. He talks more about timing, and then, things like balance and posture and on, and pitch, certainly pitch selection and swing decisions are important. But, timing is where it starts with us, because if you're not on time for a pitch at our level, you're in trouble. And I think that's the number one sort of where we foundationally start with it all. But that doesn't mean that's where everybody should or does or whatever. I just think, when you see what we see each day, and most of it's right-handed pitchers that are 88 to 92, a tick above sometimes in the bullpen, a couple ticks above. And then they usually throw a slider and a pseudo third pitch that's about average. That's the norm for us. I don't mind saying it. You know me, I'm going to be very transparent with you. And so how do you gear up for those types of guys? Now, obviously, that's another blanket statement that's not all the way true, but for 56 games, it's probably true 40 plus of those.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, mix in some lefties and this and that, but we'll talk about that later. But I would just say, if you're not, you know, you got to pay attention to what the guy's doing. And I go around and watch summer ball. You just mentioned your summer coaches. I watch summer ball, and, you know, guys aren't locked in on deck. It's a summer game. The intensity's less. It could be travel ball in their heads. It could, you know, just, I'm saying, just the stigma of it all. And it's just like, man, you have to take an at bat seriously. So,
yeah.
You know, the main thing that I like to, the best thing I ever heard, you know, I've been with the Cardinals for 27 years too as a batting practice pitcher, because some folks may not obviously know that piece. It's been a piece though that I learned a ton, because I'm a coach and I'm a sponge and I wanted to learn. I stayed down there and I kept learning and I listened, and I was in places I probably shouldn't have been, as far as, you know, batting practice pitcher, listen to the hitting guy talk one-on-one with whoever. But I was also in there throwing, so I got the luxury and unique access to hear all this. And I say that to you because it really helped me. I mean, it helped me become a really smarter coach, but also helped me probably expect too much from college-age kids and high school kids, right? So it's a double-edged sword a little bit. But my point of that is, you know, I would always listen to the smart guys about hitting to win, and that was about hitting to the scoreboard. And what that means is, if you're, you know, I think when you're up, you can get after a little bit more and get a little more aggressive. When you're down, you might have to, you know, watch out. But I'll give you, for instance, I see a lot of kids at our level, at the lower levels, high school level, guy swings at the first pitch, makes an out. His pitcher just came off the field from a 32 pitch inning, a lot of traffic, got through it, whatever. Guy swings at the first pitch, makes an out. Next guy comes up, swings at the first pitch, fouls it off, or God forbid, makes an out. You know, stuff like that. We're not paying attention to the game. We're not paying attention. So I think the scoreboard dictates where we are, what we're doing, what just happened before. And coaches, you know, if we have to be robotical now, we have all these electronic signs and all that, and we have to be robotical and go, okay, hey, you got to take here because your guy in front of you just made an out or whatever, or your pitcher needs a breather. You know, that's something that I think my past hitting coach was great at. He knew the feel of the game. Logan Moon, you know, he was really good at that, and he could slow guys down when he needed to. And so I think stuff like that needs to come back, and just, you got to pay attention, because, man, the game can get away from you in the first or second inning if you don't watch it. And it also can get away from the pitcher as a hitter if you can knock him out. So, for instance, if the bases are loaded in the second inning and you're up 2 or 3-0, man, one powerful damage swing and it's done.
Right.
And I mean that sincerely, because if you got a guy on the mound that's going, and you can put it away. So you have to take advantage and not let those opportunities slip by, you know, good or bad, winning or losing. So hitting to the scoreboard is such a, I don't know, it's a kind of a basic phrase, but man, it's powerful for me, because every game's different. It's not just go up there and try to do this. And I think there's too many people out there teaching the swing and trying to tweak the swing versus, you know, kind of letting kids do their thing a little bit, and talking about how the pitcher's pitching them, how they're getting set up, what the patterns are, what the pitch callers are doing. There's so much pitch calling and control of the game from all of us that, man, you can pick guys up in a hurry. And a lot of guys go to the well, and you can do all that. And I think if you pay attention, man, you can tell them, hey, you may need to sit soft here, and he's really falling in love with this. You always can tell what a pitcher's going to throw when he's got confidence, when he starts getting it over early in the game. When pitchers are scuffling with a breaking ball early in the game or a changeup, whatever, they tend to eliminate it. And it's like a human nature thing. They don't feel good about it, so they abandon it. Right. And sometimes you got to fight through that. And that's when you got to watch the patterns as a pitch guy. And that's your dugout's help too, to help you. But for me, it starts on deck too. You know, you got to time the guy up. There's so much that goes on deck that, you know, where you can just get lazy. Baseball's standing around, and 2024 kids and people and us coaches, I don't mean kids, but you know, we're all just dopamine driven, and we're on our phones, and we're getting bombarded with stimuli. And These are real things, man. These are real things. Nobody talks about it because we've all just sort of gotten swallowed up by it. But tech has helped us a ton, and it's hurt us a ton because our brains are just overloaded.
Yeah. Well, there's so much there, and thank you for all that. Thank you for the willingness to share all those different perspectives, and I really would like to dive into some of those. I took a bunch of notes as you were going there, so if you see me looking away at the screen, I'm a note taker.
Oh.
The first thing I caught near the beginning was talking about their game versus our game, or you said, so we got to stay in our lanes, and I really gravitated towards that because our guys, they see a lot of highlights, right? They see, Kyle Schwarber's bombs. They see, the Freddie Freeman, big hits and clutch situations. And, there's good things to pull from that, but there's also things that I think disconnect our athletes from our game, and what we got to do at the levels that we're coaching at. Maybe just expand on that a little bit more.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. So I would start at the high school level and say that, when I say stay in our lanes, I just mean, the big league game is about contracts and money. There's guys that want to win. Don't get me wrong. That's not what we're talking about, but it's why analytics, does what it does. It helps them give every edge. It certainly is a big part of it, but none of us have the analytics that big leaguers have. So, for anybody to say, well, I don't think you guys, the regular person understands how much analytics plays a part in, and some players don't like it. They don't want to hear what's coming. They don't want to hear what pitches are being, patterned. But most like to know a little bit, and they want to hear every edge they can get, of course. So think about that. Now, we've got a leadoff hitter in the big leagues right now in the Phillies who anybody would take in a minute, right? He's one of the very best. But, his batting average is, it's 200 basically, and it's 200 strikeouts or whatever, and it's 40 plus bombs, and it's just an ultimate. I mean, it's just right out of the gate, the first batter the guy sees, he could hit a home run in the first pitch of the game as good as anybody, So you're saying, wow, that's a big beast in there for me to face mentally as a pitcher, where it used to be, and you have Luis Ariz, who's the polar opposite of that, who is the best bat the ball skills out there and gets the bat on the ball and gets a lot of singles. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of what each game has sort of come to. The game has changed, but a lot of that is just, hey, you want your best hitters hitting in the first three spots, so let's put them in there. And I love it. Like we hit guys. So the game's changed there for good reason, because that spot keeps coming up, and then you're not having to get a guy. So I think, but high school kids are different. High school lineups are built more traditionally, I would say. You don't have as many great players. You don't have as many older players sometimes. It depends on the classes. And you kind of got to assemble your nine where you don't have it all. I try to put mine so not top heavy, so we don't have a drop off. And a lot of my best teams through the years have had super production at the bottom of their order. And I think that that's a really important task, because, La Russa started it. He used to hit the pitcher eighth, wanting to turn the lineup over. And he figured out that, Tony La Russa was analytics before analytics were here, right? And he and Dave Duncan would talk about all the time, let's bring our strengths to the game versus what their strengths are. So like I just said, I have a guy that pulled the ball. Well, I don't want him pushing the ball into right field for outs or flare singles or, stuff like that. So my point of that is, like, I think we as coaches have got to define our guys' strengths and go with them as much as we can, hide our weaknesses the best we can, and, not miss our pitches, not be on time. What do you do good? If you can't hit a high fastball, don't swing at it. I know that's easy for me to say, but because that's a hard pitch to lay off. I totally think that's probably not even a fair analogy, but everybody's like, okay, coach, that's great, but they're all throwing four seamers in the big leagues now that are riding, and it's up here, and they're, the break on it's just, it's you know what I mean. But high school baseball. We're talking about high school baseball now. We're not talking about pro baseball. High school baseball is pretty. It becomes a little more predictable. Where, hey, I kind of know what this guy does. He's does it. This is what he pretty much does. This is what this pitch caller does, and this is kind of what we're going to get. And
right.
It's cat and mouse for all of us. Like I've called games for 24 years. I called the game every day, every pitch, and you think about that. So you're in every pitch and you're thinking, okay, but you also have to read swings as a pitch caller. And if you don't read the swings, your report can go out the window. So it's one of those things too. Does the pitcher watch the swing, and is the hitter, is he frozen on the takes, or is he quiet on the takes? Is he jumpy? Is he, did he want to swing at that? How did he lay off that? Was he fooled? Those are questions you got to ask yourself as a pitch caller, because a guy might throw a great pitch and the guy takes it and you think, oh, I can't throw that again. Well, sure you can. Sure you can. Just, the guy was fooled. And, then when they get fooled, they get more antsy. So stuff like that, and it's bouncing around a little bit here, but it's more when you have to help your kids, I would say simplify it for your hitters first by doing what they do best, and then expanding on that with the, here's the game plan for today. Here's what we're going to see. And then most coaches do a good job. I mean, they should, of having a semi-scouting report in high school. And as far as, okay, we know this guy's this, and he's going to have a curveball versus slider. Changeup is heavy, or it's a lot of fastballs. But also remember, Brett, since my sons have played, I watched more high school than ever. But, with our schedule and their schedule, I don't get to see as many. But even in summer ball, there just aren't many kids that pitch inside, or even have a clue to how to pitch inside, or have it called inside. Like the inner half fastball, for some goofy reason, has gone away. In the big leagues, it started because they didn't want to hit the superstars, so they kind of stayed away from people. But high school baseball, if a guy doubles up on a fastball in the inner half and he hits the spots, you kind of got to tip your cap, or you got to hit one of them. But I'm saying, you don't see many doubled up fastballs on the inner half for strikes or for effect. It's more mistakes and misses. And remember, the average major league guy misses by almost 12 inches right now in his miss. I mean, it's not the old days of Greg Maddux and command. It's stuff, and stuff wins, and stuff's good. And we need swing and miss stuff. Like in recruiting, that's kind of where you're looking. And so you've got to have those guys, especially in the back end, to get the strikeout. So, strikeouts are fine in pro ball. They live with it. They don't care. But high school, college, I think we should care, quite honestly. And some people don't. They'd rather they can live with 20 home runs. And we struck out some last year, but I didn't care. I lived with it because I knew where we were going with our approach. So some of it's personnel too. I mean, if you have, this is a high school coach. I mean, if you have a team that's got, a bunch of bat to ball guys that lack power, or they're younger hitters that aren't strong yet. You shouldn't be striking out. I mean,
right.
And don't even we're not going to talk about bunting, of course, but the game is, you still got to get the bat to the ball and make the other team field it. And as well as I do, there's a lot of people that can't do that right now as well as and so, plus the other piece too, you got to say this when you're talking to hitters about approach and all this, is you always want to eliminate the umpire. And that's not talked about enough, because you got to pay attention to what the umpire is doing. Is he giving the outer half? Now, college baseball, we have TrackMan. So if they get dinged on a pitch that's that far off the plate, or it's on the white line on the turf or on the dirt, because, they're trying to get a regional, they're trying to get playoffs. So you got to pay attention to the umpire and work with them, and right away. And you got to say, hey, I can see up and down. That's my famous line from the dugout, but I can't see off the plate. And then, of course, the film will always tell you after. But in-game adjustments with the umpire are completely. I see kids just go to the well and just throw the ball off the plate there at a high school game, and the umpire keeps giving it to them. Well, they don't have TrackMan. They don't get dinged. They don't use it. It's an arbitrary zone. It's a different umpire every night, but nobody talks about that. And that's sort of my basketball official days of coming out. But it's also real when you watch a high school game, that's a big factor. And I think you have to talk to your kids about that and say, Okay, what is he doing? Is he peppering away? Is he because a lot of times you can eliminate one or two pitches of that guy. Like it's like the curveball down. If it starts down, it's going to stay down, right? So we should not be swinging at it. I say that like it's not that easy, but it is sometimes that easy.
Mm-hmm.
But see it up, see it up, see it up. Make him get the breaking ball up. Things like that have got to be said, because a lot of guys will just hammer the breaking ball down in the dirt. They don't have a real feel for landing it. The height level on it's not good. So you can basically just sit on a pitch. I mean, big leaguers do that all the time. They eliminate one of the two pitches that generally those relievers come in and they throw one or two pitches and they just eliminate it.
Right.
And if you watch the World Series, Freddie Freeman said, "I'm sitting dead red fastball in the inner half because, my heat map and my cold zone was in inner half." Right. But boy, it's kind of fun when you have the answers to the test. And Freddie Freeman's obviously one of the top 5 hitters in Major League Baseball on the planet. So I don't want to use too many pro guys in this talk, but think about what I just said. Like when a big leaguer knows what's coming, it can be dangerous.
So let's go into. I'm going to come back to that. The answers to the test are available to us if we're paying attention. I'm going to come back to that, but before we do, I want to highlight back to one of the points you mentioned earlier about hitting to the scoreboard, and I do think that you elaborated on that well, and I want to just kind of make sure that the audience really gets that, because I think it's such a powerful, simple phrase. What does I think if I were to say it in different words, like what does my team need in this moment? Right, a really simple phrase. Share on that just a little bit more.
Well, I mean, first of all, if you're a player, you should be defined as a winning player. So whatever my team needs right now, I mean, that's the ultimate compliment for me to say that when I call a kid a winning player, I certainly when you're around Tony La Russa for a long time, you hear some of the things, and he would call not the best players on the team that. He would talk about, Placido Polanco and, other guys amongst them. But I just keep thinking about guys that were, just got the most of their ability, did what they could do, stayed in their lane at their game. In other words, kids get too big when they don't need to. And the best phrase that, we try to use at SLU is a single's good here, a single wins. But everybody, we're not playing for a contract. We're trying to hit home runs. Certainly, we love home runs. That's not what we're talking about. But, sometimes the count gets a little skewed against you, and you've got to battle like mad to get it in play and get the thing done. And this isn't to talk about, new school, old school hitting or styles, or that's not remotely what this is about. It's more about high school baseball. Remember where we are. High school baseball, college baseball, whatever, trying to, my team needs me right here to get the next guy up because he's really good.
Right.
My team needs me right now because we're down 2. And if I get up, the wind's blowing out, anybody could hit a home run today. And I always tell my team that, at our park, our park's fair. It's 330, it's 375, and it's 403. So it's big at times. But I also, when the wind blows out, it's anybody can hit a home run that comes to the park that day. You can pop a ball down the left field. You played in plenty of parks like that. You've seen them all over, right? We all have. Spring weather's crazy. So how many people talk about the wind? So the scoreboard says, okay, it's 3-0. Well, if the wind's blowing out, for me, that's 1-0 game. If it's 3-0, the wind's blowing in at my place, I manage the game totally differently. I've got to get some guys on base. I've got to get, we may not get 7 singles in a row. We're not going to get 4 or 5 hits in a row off of a guy. And that's the big league thing for sure. Like you're not going to go out there and just bang, bang, bang. But that's why you got to hit home runs there. I mean, the stuff's just so good that you're going to get dinged if you don't. So I think hitting to the scoreboard in our level, plus who has a bullpen, minus the big leaguers, who has a real bullpen that's, wipeout in high school baseball. Once you get the starter out, it's sort of depending on the teams mostly, better than I do. It's you have a chance. So, if you can get to the starter, wear him down a little bit, foul his tough pitches off, that's hitting to the scoreboard.
Yeah, that's good.
Where you take no approach and fall behind, and then you put the umpire into play and you put the pitcher being able to throw different pitches into play, that's not. But
that's good.
I think generally you need to be hitting in the first 3 pitches into the at-bat. You probably better be on one of your pitches. That's probably when you're going to get the best ones. And also, when the guy's in the stretch and there's runners in the scoring position, be ready to go immediately. I want to say that because, that's a key thing that I see guys. The pitcher's on the ropes mentally, physically, scoreboard-wise, outs-wise. He is on the ropes. Traffic's out there. It's high anxiety for the pitcher, right? The heartbeat's different. And the hitter turns it into the other way around because he's not real sure what he's supposed to do right here with no plan or approach, as we talk about. Well, that just flipped the script. And then the dugout gets a little more minimum over there, and then they get a little more, and then there's 2 outs. And then it's like, okay, I got this. And you just lost the inning. You lost the inning right there. That's why you got to be ready immediately, because it can go like that on you when a guy gets a little momentum. And our game's about momentum. You know that.
That's good. That's awesome. That's I think there's so much in there about just what guys, how their brain should be thinking based on the situation, based on the scoreboard. That was awesome. Let's go to that. You talked about I made a note of like being focused on deck and being ready to who's calling the game. Is the coach calling? Is the catcher calling? Is there tendencies that are available to us? And the general phrase you said is, the answers to the test are there if you want to pay attention. And talk on that. Let's get the young hitters to understand that they can give themselves a better shot if they're paying attention.
Well, like I said, remember, everybody sees the game differently. I called pitches for forever. So I am paying attention. I watch patterns. I watch what the guy's doing over there. When they get unpredictable is when it gets wild for all of us, because we don't, but I said they will fall into patterns. They'll tip it off what's happening. And I think that you've got to figure out too is, big league hitters keep notebooks on the guys they faced before. And I'm serious, like that's not a joke, but they keep their own notebook. That's not an analytics guy saying, hey, in April, he threw you this with 2 strikes, and now we're in June or July or whatever, or the playoffs. But that's real stuff, man. And that's just sort of like I said, that's human nature where you fall in love with stuff. But it starts on deck. And if you're talking to your buddy or looking down or in the stands or wherever your head is, remember, focus is really, really hard. It's not for me to preach and talk about it. It's really hard today. It's 2024. I get it. So what we try to do is help our guys, talk to them about patterns, but you don't want to sit there. We've got an offensive earpiece that got put into play this year by rule. So I can communicate with my hitter, my base runner, and tell him, for instance, not everything, but I could tell him, hey, you probably sit on a breaking ball here, right? Well, that's a dangerous slope for me. I don't ever want to do that and be that guy, because then I'm micromanaging the entire deal. And maybe there's a few, but I this is new to me and all of us because it's the first year. But I just have a hard time, tendencies, yes, pitch, but stuff like that. So I wouldn't go that far, but they're trying to go that far in some cases. And there's control freaks out there all over the place. That are coaching our game, and it's just crazy. So how does the young hitter get to a spot where on deck he can get ready to time him up? Remember, when the pitcher is at the top of his release, hasn't released the ball yet, and he's still here with the ball, but he's getting ready to throw it. It's not behind him, it's not down. If you haven't started your swing, stride, load, all those things, right? Timing, rhythm, you're late. Mm-hmm. At that point. And that's been the biggest problem that we saw as a whole in the fall was, and I still think that's the biggest problem that I see. Guys have no concept of timing. And it starts on deck. It does. It starts on deck because, well, think about what I just said. When the guy hasn't released the ball, if you haven't started your swing, I mean, unless he's, it's thrown in the 70s um, or low 80s, and you got a little time. That's it. The other thing I don't like is nobody has a plan of what they're looking for. It's see ball, hit ball.
Mm-hmm.
Are you on time for every pitch? I had a freshman this year, and he's going to be a great player. And he asked me what he's got. He was talking to the hitter on deck. Excuse me. I was sitting there in the dugout steps, and he asked the hitter that just had batted. He goes, "Okay, real fast." I could see his body language is going 100 miles an hour. And he said, "A fastball, two seam, four seam, sinker, change up, slider." He goes, and I said, "Whoa! That approach is going to get you in trouble. First of all,
Yeah.
you can't cover everything. You're going 100 miles an hour." Look, these things are easy for me to talk about slowly in December, right? They really are. But that's why I feel for the kids. They just got a lot going on. So I try to slow it down for them now. I wish I'd have known this a long time ago, because obviously I'm a uber competitive guy, and I played the game very fiery as well. If you ask people, it's no secret. So I'm not going to sit here and preach, oh, you got to slow down and this. But if now that we know what we know, and we're older and we're wiser and we made a million mistakes, we can go back and humbly say, okay, let me help this guy calm down. Let me try to simplify it to sit on this pitch or this and be on time for this. Because mostly what happens is, especially in high school baseball, you get to the fastballs, you miss them, you put good swings on them, you foul them back. The pitch caller is going to go, to the other one at some point, and you're going to have to figure out how to hit both. And most kids are learning still how to hit, be on time for all that and hit all that.
Right.
And hit it hard. I don't mean hit it. I mean hit it hard. So those are things for me that if you're not ready on deck, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. But you also kind of pay attention to, okay, if I'm a 3, 4, 5 guy and I'm one of our 3 best hitters, he just got the 3-hole out ahead of me with this pitch and this sequence, and it's been going well. I'm probably going to get the same sequence. So really, everybody in the park who's paying attention ought to know what's coming. Mm-hmm. Does that help? I think so. Still got to hit it, because hitting's hard. But I think if you just watch a similar guy like you, who's probably standing next to you, and 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, whatever, those guys get pitched a lot alike in high school, especially. So that's a big giveaway for me too, that I don't think is followed enough.
You talked a lot about in that section there about simplification. You talked about the anxiety or the speeding up that happens in hitters' brains. How I love the phrase, you can't cover every pitch. It's very typical to see those athletes try to process it all, and they're anxious, they're nervous, they got a million things going on in their minds. What do you see around that, and how do you help?
Well, that's the biggest challenge every day now. And like I said, my gosh, I used to be, tough on hitters and just be like unrealistically thinking that because I knew what was coming, they should hit it. So that's one of my, grievances that I have to live with about regrets, as far as, hitting's just so freaking hard. And I think today, like I said, I just know my kids are coming from a different place right now. We spend a lot of time in the mental health area. We spend a lot of time in slowing them down that we should have a long time ago. But we've also learned a lot more, right? The world's gone way faster. And, think about what I'm about to say. When you used to take in the bat, you'd wait till after the game, perhaps have the film guy splice it and get it to you maybe the next day. Now you go to the dugout and you watch your at bat on an iPad. Stuff like that is happening. So the feedback is instant, which is fine. That helps a lot of people, especially in the pro game, of course. But for us, I think kids are looking at their at-bats on Twitter after games. They're looking at their bats on YouTube. Their coaches might have them, their dads, moms, whoever is filming them. So that's good for us to have that information quicker, of course. But, are you watching the right things? Are you reinforcing the right things? And I think if you watch a winter hitter's training session, um, it can get a little goofy sometimes with some of the where they're training, what they're training, who they're with. I mean, everybody's got their swing guru. It's such a mental game. Some person could say something some way, and some could say the same thing but say it a different way, and it clicks. And that's just the way the sport is. It's like golf comparisons, like it's easy to talk about, it's hard to do. So I think that the most we can calm them down, and it, emotions play a big part, but generally, quiet feet, quiet mind, getting in the box with some confidence and body language is half the battle. And then, practicing what you're not good at is massive. So what we do is we got a lot of, higher flight, higher spin balls, put them in the machine, and guys will look bad, and they'll go through some failure. And I always talk about high school kids should be practicing the outer half fastball and breaking ball a ton off of a machine, because that's the pitches they see the most. If you went through the charts at the end of the game, it would be 70% or more over here on the outer half. Yet we are this far off the plate, and we're not practicing that. And we're waiting for an inner half fastball because that's what we goofed around in the indoor cages in all winter and pulled the ball into the net, right? My point is, practice what you're going to see until you get a little better at it, and then a little better at it. And then, it becomes not – anxiety is really caused by lack of preparation, if you think about it too. But it's also, there's some guys you just tip your cap. Like if you're facing some dudes on the mound that are just carving you, and you have to say, man, I'm just scrapping and clawing and battling today, that's different. I mean, that's we all go through those days, where you just couldn't hit it with a boat oar. And I think that those are things that, but I would say if I was a high school coach, I'd be setting up that thing to the outer half as much as I could. You can still pull an outer half ball. I mean, get it out in front. It's like people think, I got to let the ball get way deep. And all these people are talking about these terms that they don't even know what they're saying. They don't know what it means. I mean, truly. And you say, okay, but just have your strengths, but work like crazy on your weaknesses. That helps the anxiety piece a ton.
Yeah. That, simplifying the mind, having an approach, getting the answers to the test, being a winning player that hits to the scoreboard, really, really good stuff. Let's shift a little bit to the practice side. And I would like to just maybe lean in a little bit on that experience that you had as a batting practice thrower. How would you talk about a batting practice session? What does that look like in your mind for a hitter that is ahead, mentally in a good spot around approach? What does a mature batting practice session look like to you?
Well, it's all over the board. Now it's about, preparing for that guy's starter, velo, machines, higher spin. If it's a higher spin guy, the machines come on. So you can, I can't simulate that as an old batting practice pitcher. So times have changed there for the good, like hitting off of a guy like me in Major League Baseball probably isn't the greatest thing anymore. So the game's changed. So that's good, right? So I would say, how has it changed? How has it evolved? What does it look like? It's different for everybody. A lot of guys have their routines. They start indoors, generally with some tee work, front toss, just to get themselves going. And then they move it, and then they kind of go, all right, I'm having trouble with this. I'm going to work on this right now. And that could be the high fastball, the high tee drill. That could be the outer half, whatever. That could be the breaking ball. I'm really pulling off. I think of like Nolan Gormans of the world, who have all the potential, young hitter, but he's got a lot of front shoulder issues that, he's battling because he's trying to hit home runs, and that's what they want him to do. And then Jordan Walker, so you start talking about a whole different game now. You're talking about a whole different game where agents are involved and third parties are involved, and money's in everything, and it means everything, and it's their life. So it's a whole different talk. But I think in batting practice, you know, because Ray Langford said something that was interesting. He said, um, you know, I would throw to him, and we were indoors one day, and I threw a bell tie fastball right down the middle. I was in just normal strike, and afterward he didn't swing at it. And afterwards he said something to me about. I said Ray, what is those pitches? And he's like, oh no, those are good. He goes, I just can't hit them, so I don't swing at them. So I trained. In other words, he was a low ball hitter, and that's about swing path. Know your swing path. I talked about what are you good at. You can't be good at the low ball, the high ball, the outer half, the slider, the fastball, the curveball. So you got to know what you're good at and not miss those, right? And that starts in BP. But I think too many guys get in there. Here's your cue, Brett. Ask your guys on the optional end round what they want. Now, if it's not a feel good day, and because you want to end on a good note always, obviously for this. But if it's not a feel good day in the fall or early spring where you're trying to get going, ask your guys, hey, what do you want this round? If it's an optional round in BP, and see what they say. And that'll give everything away for me, because the really good hitter's going to say, I want the thing I'm not really good at right now.
Yeah, right.
The other guy's going to say, hey, maybe middle end. Mm-hmm. One more. If you start hearing those guys, we call it the one more club at SLU, and I say, get out of there, But I think BP has evolved so much, and it's probably a little overrated in the big leagues because they play every night. So those guys can get themselves ready. High school, college, everyone else, we need it every day. Like, we hit on the field all the time, but I think that's a big piece and we'll mix up the rounds based on the starter. We'll mix up the machine based on the starter. If it's a left-handed guy, soft tosser, certainly we do it differently. If it's a right-handed, harder thrower, higher spin guy, we do it differently. I mean, this is all stuff that's basic, but not everybody has the luxury of hitting on the field every day. Not everybody has the luxury of having good BP throwers, and not everybody has a machine. So you got to be creative out there. I'm realistic about that too. Obviously, when I do clinics and talks, I try to, get creative with the space, the time, stuff like that you guys are fighting on as high school coaches. And I think that if you're, it does start there too with how you're attacking the ball and what you're doing with your whole rounds that you pick. If you allow the players to pick their rounds, they'll tell you everything that's going on with what they're doing right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to hit on that point of practicing what you're not good at, and you even talked about being okay with failure, or maybe you didn't say be okay with it, but getting okay to train hard stuff or uncomfortably, or do things that are going to cause you to fail. Maybe that's a better way to say it. Talk a little bit more about that. I agree that I think that's a separator for the guys that really understand hitting. Is they're okay to be in that headspace. They're okay to be in that practice training mode, and it doesn't leak over into, I needed a pat on the butt and tell me I did great, and I needed to hit a pull side home run to feel comfortable. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's kind of a societal thing that's slipped in gradually, and now it's kind of everywhere, and hopefully it'll come back around full circle. But I say this seriously, because if you listen like Saban and football guys about failure and next play and moving on, and I learn a lot from other sports and other coaches that are cross over. Everybody wants to leave practice every day feeling good. Every coach wants to leave and feel like the team's better. Okay. Well, when you've coached, I think somebody told me the other day it was 1,600 games now in whatever. Who cares? It's a lot of years. The problem is that as well as I do, baseball, the beauty of our game and the hard part too is we get to do it the next day. Football, you got to watch film for a week and see everything you did wrong. Basketball, you got 4 days off, and you got to, baseball is very forgiving. So remember that when you're starting out. Mm-hmm. You probably got a game the next day or two. Okay. Mm-hmm. No, it doesn't help you at that moment, but we're not really good at absorbing momentary failures right now as a whole society, right? So this is my sort of my bigger overarching view of this, as I look at, how do these kids take it bad? Like, nobody wants to make an out, but did you make a good out? Did you make a loud out? Did you make a hard out? That's a good thing. Like, that's okay. Right. And I think when you leave practice, you've got to be able to say, some of our best practices this fall, and I just learned this. I mean, I have fought this for a long time. This is real, because as a coach, you're a perfectionist. You're trying to make sure everybody's feeling good and in a good headspace, and you're ready to go, and your team's good, and you got them prepared, and you did. So you got to kind of leave your ego at the door a little bit and go, okay, it's okay if we don't. And I use this phrase all fall this year, and I mean it sincerely. I had 21 new players, and I knew it was going to be messy. So I said, but it's no different from a high school coach who has a lot of new players each year, right? Or the turnover is different, or a graduation. You got to say to them, it's okay to have a day like we had today, as long as we recognize what we're trying to get to and where we're at. But what happens is it compounds into a week or the next 3 days, and then you have a stretch that goes on in the season, and you lose guys, and you lose the ship, and you lose it, right? And I just can't tell you, a lot of that is time on high school baseball. You guys don't have time. The schedule's not as long. Every game kind of matters, That's why the big leagues, they can throw away a game and flush it, and it's a blip. In our levels, there's more of an urgency. So you got to kind of, say, if I had a bad day today, how do I fix this? So yeah, of course there's urgency. I mean, how do you, I don't know how to say that other way, but when a kid walks out of the cage and he makes an out, I walks out of a game and he makes an out, how do you approach it as a coach? Do you say nothing, which is probably the best way sometimes, or do you just try to subtly help him? And if it's a loud out, you should be saying, hey, keep going. Don't do anything different. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah. What does it look like when you see one of your guys, in December, January, February, and they're training the things that they're not good at? What does that look like?
Well, it's setting from a hitting standpoint, like we're talking today, it's setting the machine up to hit the high pitch, the higher spin pitch for us. Restricted flight balls that are higher spin balls. It can be all kinds of stuff with drill work as far as machine velo closer to you. But I like to put the machine realistic distance so that it looks realistic, right? But a lot of us that have junior hacks, and if you don't have a big machine out there, it's not going to throw it as hard. So stuff like that you're trying to create bat speed in the winter a lot too. Swing a heavy bat. That's a lost art too. That needs to happen more to create bat speed, because our game's twitchy, and we have fast twitch guys. You can't just be a bear and a bull and just grab the bat and caveman it. Some guys can cave. You can have one caveman on your team. That's what I always say. We tell our recruiting coordinators that, but you can't have 9 of them, right? So stuff like that in the winter. But like I said, if I was a high school group, knowing what I watch, knowing what I see, knowing pitchers' tendencies and where they are in their time of their career, what they can do at that moment, I would practice the outer half until I couldn't do it anymore. I always tell my guys, you can hit that pitch in your sleep on the inner half. I need to see what you do with the outer half. In other words, a lot of our kids at SLU can roll out of bed in the winter and probably pull an inner half fastball after one round of BP. Relatively easy. You know what I mean? Like in BP. Right. I'm saying in BP, pull a ball with some loud contact. It's the outer half stuff. It's the spin. It's all that other stuff that separates the other hitters. Of course, hitting spins really hard. Okay. Mm-hmm. But if you practice it, it's, like I said, it takes some of that anxiety away. It takes some of that, man, I'm just not really good at this. And because I've had young hitters because here's the problem. Guys get to college now from high school. They don't see the slider in high school as much. It's not repeated. It's not a strike back to back. It's not in the zone. It's in the dirt. They get to college, and man, they can get to the well with it. And they're not used to that. So that in itself is a profound statement that is not really discussed, because that's a jump. That is a big jump for a high school hitter to go. And remember, the age of our players now, in some cases, is 25 years old. Think about what I just said. So you got guys that can repeat pitches, they're smart, that know what they're doing, and also people that are watching your swings. You've got video, you got analytics. I mean, hitting is so hard, but you also have a lot more information as a hitter. So just, you've got to pay attention. You've got to watch and say, we chart everybody's pitch on the other team. We chart our own, of course, but we chart the other pitches too. Man, I would do that in the dugout. I'd put some goofy pitcher versus talking to somebody and ruining my dugout and goofing around. Right. Although they're good to keep it loose sometimes. I would put somebody that's smart and likes the game and chart the other team's pitches and say, hey, man, this is X, Y, and Z. This is what you got the last time. Because guess what? That pitching coach in the other dugout's got the same chart. And he goes, okay, I threw breaking ball, fastball, whatever. I mean, people probably are already doing this. I'm sorry. I don't want to.
Answers to the test. That's right.
That's the stuff that it gives you, I always call it 5% more. Just what can you do 5% better as far as, because, it's not like we're going to solve this all. If you get a hit 3 out of 10 times, all that stuff is, you're just try to hit the ball hard right now. Your strength's going to come, get in the weight room. And I think you'll see massive gains through that alone, because a lot of guys mainly lack bat speed and they mainly lack an approach, and they have no concept of timing. Those are my 3 big giveaways of problems that we need to troubleshoot earlier.
Yes, good. Wow. A lot of info, and boy, we could keep going, Darin. I love hearing, your perspectives and the wide range of perspectives that you have and how you kind of drill that down for your guys. Let's wrap this up by me just kind of throwing this question out to you. So let's talk to the high schoolers right now, the high school coaches, the high school players, the club coaches, the club players. What can we do to help hitters have a better hitting approach and prepare for the next level?
How much time do we have? Well, first of all, I would keep it real simple. 3 big bullet points. Work at timing, work at pitch recognition, and work on your weaknesses and how you prepare for all those, and have a plan of attack with those 3, kind of main things. And I don't mean like those are the only things to work on. I just mean, if you put, you got me down here, held down, and I've got to give you a quick 2-second answer. I just keep seeing, those are the big themes that college coaches keep seeing. We see it in recruiting, but train bat speed, get in the weight room. But high school coaches, I think, set your practices up, February, March, whenever you start, I guess, early March, February time, you got to go fast forward, right? Now they've been training all winter. So then you get them, and you may have to peel back some stuff that you don't like that they were doing at the training. Just like I have to peel it back, just like big league. So it's a food chain thing that's layered, right? Mm-hmm. So rather than spend your time trying to do some of that, get to the shortcuts of what you want that will help you win games at that point right now, and make that kid a better player so he can get to his next level, whatever that goal is. My point of that is saying is, don't spend too much time trying to, you don't have an entire fall ball like we do. Our fall ball, we can peel the onion as much as we can get to November. Right. You don't have the time. So don't spend too much time saying, don't do this, don't do this. Try to reinforce the positives and say, hey, look, you're a really good low ball hitter. You're a really good high ball hitter. Don't miss that pitch. And here's how we need to get on time and practice all that. But remember what I said about before the pitcher releases the ball, if they're not on time, those things can be practiced anywhere in front of a mirror. They can be practiced, but just work at a load. Like watch. I'll tell you what I would do is I would also put a video of some big leaguers up at their pre-pitch work, as far as here comes the pitch, here's the pitcher in his delivery. So you see when, where, how, and don't try to say everybody's the same way. Like don't try to say hit like Freddie Freeman or hit like Bryce Harper or hit like, Mookie Betts to me is such a, like everything's right with him. It doesn't, maybe everyone can't do that, of course, but I just really like watching him from a right-handed point of view. Now, left-handed hitters obviously are cleaner, but watch a pro guy from a high school standpoint and just say, okay, look what he does. And just point out the big stuff so you're not overwhelming him.
Yeah.
Don't say hit like Mookie Betts. Don't say, have the leg lift. Don't say all these things. But just say, look what he does here. Look what he does here, and look what he does. And that's it. And just move on. But the visuals help these guys tremendously. And you have to point it out because they're not watching the same thing you're watching.
I really hope that everybody kind of took some kind of conclusion from that, which is, focusing on timing, focusing on pitch recognition, focusing on the hitter's weaknesses. We can get, I know from just experience, as an off-season guy that does a lot of training with athletes, like we can get stuck in swings and patterns and some of that other stuff that is important. And over time it develops, especially as the athlete develops. But I really hope that this series, when we're kind of breaking down the mindset of hitting, I really hope that we as coaches can continue to help the athletes focus in some of those other areas that translate to our game a little bit better. And yeah.
Well, last thing, Brett, there's all kinds of things that, we didn't even talk about the swing really today, but that's a whole video in itself.
Yep.
If you think about it, I mean, there's only one Aaron Judge that, works with Swing Guru like he does. Like there's only, those guys are really gifted people, right? And that doesn't mean you don't work on your swing. I didn't say that today at all. You asked me, remember what we talked about. We talked about staying in our lane as far as your job is to win high school baseball games. My job is to win college baseball games. My job is not to get my player another contract and get more money and on and on. That's their job. Okay. So everybody's got a different deal and a different role. And also remember that, the College World Series last year, Tennessee, that's AA baseball for the most part. I mean, I say that tongue in cheek, but that's not real everyday college baseball anymore. Okay. That's okay. Times have changed. Great program, great stuff. My point is kids get caught up watching all that and they get hung up in that. And I got to get to there. And then they think I'm a failure. Just stay in your deal and try not to think I'm missing out on being that guy. Yep. And I think you can get a lot better, but that's my big takeaway.
That's awesome. The thing I just want to conclude with is I can't say thank you enough. Thank you for being an open book. Thank you for sharing. I'm always amazed at, professionals like yourself that have done this for such a long time and your willingness to help others. And we all grab from each other and we go and try to help the athletes be the best versions they can. So Darin, I'm really grateful for you.
Happy to do it. Always happy. Thanks a lot. And I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Hardball Talks. And we look forward to the next one.